Men, let's establish one fundamental truth. The words a woman says during intimate moments are never random, never meaningless, never just empty sounds made in the heat of passion. They are direct windows into her subconscious mind, revealing her genuine emotions, her deepest attachments, her hidden desires, and sometimes, most painfully, her carefully guarded secrets that she'd never consciously disclose in normal conversation. Today, we're breaking down 5 specific phrases women say during intimate moments that are clear signs she's comparing you to another man, measuring your performance against recent experiences with someone else. If you've heard even one of these phrases repeatedly, it's time to open your eyes and truly examine what's happening, because what initially seems like a compliment or innocent feedback could actually be a sign of ongoing betrayal. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and hit the hype by dropping a comment if you've ever heard a phrase during intimate moments that didn't sit right with you, that felt slightly off, even if you couldn't articulate why, and only later realized what it really meant when other evidence of infidelity emerged. 1. That feels so different, the comparison leak. At first exposure, this phrase sounds relatively innocent, perhaps even flattering in certain contexts. But when you understand female psychology deeply, you realize that different almost never means random or isolated. It inherently means relative to something else, measured against another experience, contrasted with a previous baseline. And in the most intimate context of all, in the bedroom where vulnerability and physical connection create powerful memories, that something else she's comparing against is almost certainly another man. When she says something feels different, she's not describing the physical sensation in pure isolation or vacuum. She's unconsciously, or sometimes quite consciously, drawing a mental comparison line between how she felt with someone else and how she feels with you right now. And if she's never used that specific comparative language before in your years together, especially if you haven't changed anything about your technique or approach, then that perceived difference didn't originate from any change in you. It originated from a new reference point in her experience, someone else's touch, someone else's style, someone else's body. The most revealing part of this phrase is often not the words themselves, but her tone when delivering them. If she sounds genuinely intrigued, notably surprised, or overly focused on exploring and emphasizing that difference, she's subconsciously reliving a recent experience and actively measuring you against it in real time. The comparison isn't abstract or theoretical, it's immediate and based on fresh memory. Psychology breakdown reveals that humans rarely notice or comment on different without having a clear reference point to compare against. When that reference point appears suddenly out of nowhere in your bedroom conversations, when comparative language enters intimate moments where it never existed before, it's usually because a new experience is still remarkably fresh in her mind, recent enough that the contrast feels notable and worth verbalizing. What to watch for? If she uses this phrase repeatedly across multiple intimate encounters, or if she emphasizes this or that with unusual emotional intensity that seems disproportionate to the actual physical experience, it's a significant red flag that someone else's touch, someone else's approach, someone else's technique is still actively influencing her perception and experience of yours. The repetition suggests ongoing comparison rather than a one-time observation. 2. Do it like that again. The replay request. This particular phrase is remarkably easy to miss or misinterpret because on the surface, it sounds like straightforward feedback, like helpful communication about what she enjoys, like the kind of intimate dialogue that relationship experts encourage partners to engage in. But there's a much deeper psychological layer operating beneath these seemingly innocent words. The instruction often isn't genuinely about you and what you're doing. It's about recreating something he did, replaying an experience she had with another man that left a powerful imprint. when she suddenly starts asking you to do something exactly a specific way, with unusual precision and emphasis on getting it right, especially if she's never requested that particular action or technique before in your entire history together. She might be actively trying to recreate a sensation she experienced with someone else. She isn't exploring new territory with you as her partner. She's replaying a memory, chasing a specific feeling, attempting to duplicate an experience that doesn't belong to your shared, intimate history. And this isn't about healthy, dirty talk or mutual experimentation or discovering preferences together. It's about precision, about exactness, about getting it just like that. Phrases like, do it exactly like that again. Right there, just like before. Keep doing that exactly the same way usually indicate she's chasing a familiar memory that's remarkably specific, one that wasn't created by you, but that she's now trying to recreate using you as a substitute. Female psychology insight demonstrates that when an emotional or physical experience is particularly powerful, when intimacy creates intense pleasure or connection, it imprints itself deeply and indelibly in memory. Attempting to recreate that experience isn't necessarily a conscious, deliberate decision. It's often a psychological compulsion, an unconscious drive to recapture what felt good, to re-experience pleasure that's now associated with specific actions and techniques. What to watch for? This becomes dramatically more suspicious if the technique or style she's suddenly requesting is something you've never done before in your relationship, and she's never asked for in the past, despite ample opportunity. That sudden change, that abrupt introduction of new requests with specific parameters, often signals a new point of reference has entered her experience, another man's approach that she enjoyed enough to want repeated, even if she has to guide you to recreate it, because it's not naturally part of your style. 3. I've never felt this way before. The overcompensating lie. This particular phrase might initially sound like the ultimate compliment, like the validation every partner wants to hear about their intimate connection and impact. But it's actually often the most psychologically manipulative phrase on this entire list. Why? Because women consciously use it to rewrite the narrative of their infidelity, to disguise their betrayal under layers of exaggerated praise designed to prevent you from questioning or suspecting what's really happening. If she declares, "I've never felt like this before," or "No one's ever made me feel this way," or variations emphasizing the unprecedented nature of your connection, stop and think critically. Is that statement really true? If you've been together for a substantial period, months or years, why is she saying this now and not during earlier stages of your relationship when feelings were fresh and intense? What changed that suddenly makes this worth declaring? Female psychology on guilt and deception tells us that cheaters frequently overcompensate through excessive reassurance. Guilt drives them to convince their partners of devotion and satisfaction, even when that requires dishonesty or exaggeration. They hope that by making you feel special, unique, unparalleled, you won't question their loyalty or look deeper into behavioral changes that might reveal betrayal. The praise functions as misdirection and as guilt management simultaneously. The profound irony: most of the time this phrase is said precisely because she has felt that way before. She's experienced similar or more intense connection and pleasure, just not with you. And now, she's trying desperately to ease her own guilty conscience by flipping the script, by verbally reassigning to you experiences and feelings that actually belong to someone else. It's revisionist history delivered as compliment. What to watch for? If her passionate words don't match her actual behavior outside the bedroom, if this verbal praise exists alongside increased phone secrecy, noticeably less affection during normal daily interactions, new emotional distance when you're not being intimate, or sudden changes in her availability and communication patterns, then this isn't a genuine compliment reflecting her true feelings. It's a calculated cover-up, a verbal smokescreen, designed to prevent you from seeing what she's hiding behind the praise. 4. I want to try something new. Introducing his ideas. Trying new things together, exploring different dimensions of physical intimacy, experimenting with various approaches can absolutely be exciting and healthy for long-term relationships. But timing and context matter enormously in determining whether this represents genuine mutual exploration or whether it reveals outside influence. If she suddenly brings up new positions, previously unmentioned fantasies, or things she's always wanted to try, especially without clear explanation about where these desires originated or why they're surfacing now, you should seriously ask yourself where those specific ideas actually came from. In female psychology, intimate desire and preference don't appear spontaneously in a vacuum. Most new ideas are sparked by some form of exposure, either through conversations with others, consumption of media, development of fantasies, or most significantly, real experiences with new partners. And if she's recently been intimate with someone else, those new preferences, requests, and interests often directly reflect his influence, his style, his preferences, not hers, independently developed. Pay extremely close attention to the tone and timing surrounding these requests. Did these ideas appear immediately after a period of unusual emotional distance or physical unavailability? Are they oddly specific and detailed, things you never discussed before, despite years together and presumably open communication? Does she push for them persistently, even if they feel noticeably out of character for her, based on everything you know about her preferences and comfort levels? If multiple of these factors apply, this isn't about healthy exploration or natural relationship evolution. It's about transferring someone else's dynamic, someone else's preferences, someone else's intimate style into your relationship. What to watch for? Sudden dramatic shifts in her sexual preferences, especially ones that arrive with strong enthusiasm and urgency that seems disproportionate, are often psychological residue from another man. She experienced something with him that created new awareness or desire, and now she's either testing whether you can provide similar satisfaction or unconsciously incorporating learned behaviors and preferences from that affair into your intimate life together. The specificity and timing of these requests reveal their true origin. 5. You feel so much better. The accidental comparison. This is arguably the most dangerous phrase of all on this list, precisely because it's often completely unintentional. She might not even consciously realize she said it, might not register that she verbalized a thought that should have stayed internal. And that unintentional nature is exactly what makes it the most psychologically revealing and honest indicator of ongoing comparison and recent infidelity. When a woman uses explicitly comparative language during intimate moments, words like better, more intense, stronger, different, amazing like this, that inherently require a baseline to compare against, she's revealing through language structure itself that a benchmark already exists in her experience. And benchmarks, reference points, standards of comparison only exist meaningfully if there's someone else to measure you against, if there's a recent alternative experience providing the contrast. The underlying psychology is remarkably simple. Emotional and physical memory doesn't conveniently erase itself just because she's currently with you instead of him. If she's been intimate with another man recently, within days or weeks, part of her consciousness is still actively processing that experience, still comparing, still measuring, still evaluating differences, and that comparison process will inevitably surface subconsciously in her language, in her responses, in her verbalizations, during vulnerable moments, even when she's consciously trying her absolute hardest to hide the affair and maintain the illusion that you're her only intimate partner. The comparison leak happens because maintaining perfect compartmentalization between two intimate relationships is psychologically impossible, especially during physical intimacy When psychological guards are naturally lowered and authentic responses become harder to control. Her subconscious mind is making comparisons constantly, and occasionally, those comparisons break through into conscious verbalization before she can stop them. What to watch for? If you've been together for a substantial period, years of established intimate connection, and she's never used comparative language like this before, never felt the need to verbally rate or rank or measure your intimate connection, and now suddenly she does with some frequency, that dramatic shift isn't random or meaningless. It's almost always tied directly to a new reference point in her experience, to recent intimate encounters with someone else that created the comparison baseline she's now unconsciously verbalizing. The timing of the language change reveals when the affair likely began, or when it crossed into physical intimacy. Female psychology proves conclusively that language during intimate moments represents some of the least guarded, most honest communication between partners because physical vulnerability naturally reduces psychological defenses and protective barriers. What she says during these encounters often reveals truths she'd never consciously acknowledge in normal conversation, letting slip evidence of comparison, of recent experiences, of active infidelity through phrases and expressions that reference a reality she's desperately trying to hide from you.